I found Sonic Origins Plus for $5 at Walmart. Honestly, despite any lingering issues that remain after the patches, it's a bit of a steal, so I guess this is the Sonic 2 follow-up, Sonic the Hedgehog 2 Anniversary Mode, which was initially released in 2022. This isn't a review of Origins per se, but more so just of this new version of Sonic 2, which has a few new features and was built in the Retro engine, which Sonic Mania was also built in, and the developer of said engines, Whitehead, had at least a little bit of involvement in getting the engine set up for this compilation title, although Whitehead had mostly moved on from Sega at this point, and Headcannon, the studio that also worked on Mania, put together the game themselves, although it's worth noting, one of Headcannon's developers blames a lot of the port's issues on the coding Sega themselves had done after the ports were submitted. Beyond that, many of the bugs and issues have been patched, so I guess that's become less relevant. Anyway, the Anniversary Mode has a good chunk of changes from Sonic 2's base game, the 16:9 aspect ratio being the most obvious, but also wrapping in the drop dash, new characters, and removing lives, plus some minor stuff here and there. Sonic Origins is available on PS4, PS5, Xbox One, Xbox Series X, Switch, and PC, so it's a very available version of Sonic 2, although I guess it's worth noting as well that Sonic 2 is already on all of these consoles, with the changes and bonuses from Anniversary Mode and Origins in general kinda making or breaking how valuable the collection is for you. The core Sonic 2 experience is largely intact for Anniversary Mode. The biggest change is to the characters, expanding the roster from Sonic and Tails, who can both be played individually now, to also include Knuckles, who was previously playable in Sonic 2 via Sonic and Knuckles, and Amy, who was added in the Plus DLC. And on top of having a slightly weaker version of the drop dash, which seems to boost her much less but causes her to swing her hammer as she goes to pop enemies, can also spin her hammer in the air, which slightly extends the range she can hit enemies from, which can be very occasionally helpful, mostly against Eggman fights that hover far above the ground, like in Aquatic Ruin. And either of these new characters can also partner up with Tails. Both characters are solid additions to the roster, although Amy isn't nearly as interesting as you'd hope. She's very often just Sonic. Hidden Palace Zone also returns from the 2013 phone remaster, a level cut from Sonic 2's initial release, which was essentially a new level for the mobile release, using the old level theming, but an all-new design that was created just for that port, and can be accessed from a secret exit in Mystic Cave Zone. Hidden Palace is a fairly short one-act zone and has some fun gimmicks of its own, like water slides, sort of like Hydrosity from Sonic 3, jellyfish enemies that grab at Sonic, and a really unique boss fight against Eggman's Egg Brass, which drops bombs using musical notes, and these bombs can be used to splash water on its thrusters to bring it down to Sonic's level, which is way more clever than pretty much any of the other bosses in this game, if I'm being honest. The level's a cute bonus. It hasn't been available outside of the 2013 iPhone version, so having it on something with a little less baggage is nice, and it's a rather fun level on its own. Lives are removed, which is what it is honestly, and in their place are coins, which are earned whenever lives would be, and can be used to retry special stages, which is honestly a relief given how dreadful Sonic 2's are, or to buy music, artwork, and videos in the game's museum, which is fairly cute. The game runs pretty perfectly at 60 frames per second, it's very smooth, and this extends to the special stages, which does make them a little more tolerable, although they're still pretty memorization dependent and tedious. I also did notice, on the PS4 version being played on a PS5, that I would very rarely drop inputs. I would certainly hope that this isn't an issue with the PS4 version, given how old these games are, but it may be even worse if it's just a general issue where sometimes it just doesn't read your jump. For the most part, outside of that singular issue, the game was very smooth and enjoyable, with no major slowdowns or bugs, although I'm sure you could nitpick some minor differences from the original. Outside of the main game, there are a few additional modes added in. A mirror mode, which, like Mario Kart, flips the game horizontally, which is extremely disorienting. A boss rush, how exciting, a bunch of platformer bosses. And missions, which are little bite-sized challenges that mostly revolve around defeating enemies, but have a few inspired ideas. They're alright basically, but they're more for the museum coin grind than anything else. As it goes, there isn't much to cover on the presentation end. The 16:9 is fantastic and gives you a substantial amount of foresight that you didn't have before. The frame rate is smooth as hell, which is huge in the special stages especially, and everything in the game still holds up really well. Sonic 2 was a good-looking game with good-looking sprite work, cute characters and enemies, and varied level themings. These are all brought over basically one-to-one and they haven't aged a day. You just get to see more at a time. The only real addition of note is Amy, who uses her Sonic CD design, which I honestly prefer over a modern design, and who slots into Sonic 2 extremely naturally, with a cute sprite and animations that are on par with Sonic's. The game also starts and ends with extremely well animated cutscenes, although each one is fairly short, just showing Sonic and Tails' first meeting, then the Death Egg falling out of the sky to set up Sonic 3. I'll take them for sure. They're gorgeous, but they're also not that much. There's maybe 45 seconds of them. The music also hasn't depreciated with time. Shocker, I know, one of the best 16-bit soundtracks ever made is back and sounding clean as hell. Genesis emulation often has issues with the music sounding off thanks to the Genesis's odd sound chip, but it sounds perfectly crisp and clean here. The game is the true Sonic 2 experience. With Sonic Origins being rock bottom on cost right now, it definitely feels like the collection is much more worthwhile, and Sonic 2's Anniversary Mode is quite good. If you've already got a way to play it, it's not a game changer, but playing Knuckles in Sonic 2 is relatively rare thanks to the difficulties of emulating that and the difficulties of getting your hands on the carts. And Amy is a nice addition in Plus. However, the 16:9, the addition of the Drop Dash, and some fun bonus features outside of the game are a nice reason to revisit it if you haven't in a while. It's also a real nice entry point. The removal of lives smooths out some of the less pleasant stuff at the end, although the final boss is still kind of a nightmare, and the 16:9 makes the game feel very modern. What I'm trying to say is, Sonic 2 is still a banger, so this cleaned up version is as well.